were you diagnosed with?
I had multiple diagnoses, psychosis.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I can't understand why I can't just focus. It's got an autofocus.
Well, we now go into the trial. And leading up to the trial, there was extensive psychiatric evaluation. What were you diagnosed with?
I had multiple diagnoses, psychosis, depression, major depression, and psychosis.
Okay. Going into the trial, were you offered a plea deal?
We tried to do a plea deal with the government. We asked for 4 life sentences with the sentences to be served concurrently, with a chance of parole in 15 or 20 years. And at the time, Rudolph Giuliani was the guy we were dealing with at the Justice Department, and he turned it down.
Okay. So now you go into the trial. How long was the trial itself?
2 months.
2 months. Did you testify?
No.
Okay, why is that?
My lawyers didn't want me to.
Okay. When you saw everything play out in the courtroom over 2 months, did the victims get up and speak?
Not the victims, but I had 4 doctors on my side testify. I had 4 doctors on the government side testify, and my family testify. We had a lot of testimony, but not the victims.
Well, leading up to the shooting, you were having problems with your family. I think that your parents said that you couldn't actually stay in the house, you had to stay in a hotel and so forth, right?
Right.
Okay. So this had been leading up, and people around you, especially your family, knew about the mental illness and so forth. So, on the government side, were the doctors trying to say that you're perfectly normal and you're a calculated killer?
Just about, yeah.
Okay. Well, so then it gets down to the jury verdict on June 21st, 1982. And the jury deliberates for 4 entire days. So, leading up to this, how did you feel about the verdict?
I thought I was going to be found guilty, so I was really shocked when I was found not guilty of brazen insanity. I think the rest of the country was shocked too.
Okay, so had you been found guilty, what would have been the sentence?
It would have been life, I'm sure.
Okay. So you were planning on doing life in prison at that point?
As I said, that kind of wasn't at the forefront of my mind, but I knew there was a possibility. Yeah.
Okay, because leading up to the trial, you're still in your delusion about Jodie Foster.
Right.
Okay, so after 4 days of deliberation, spending 24 hours total during deliberation, the jury came back with not guilty by reason of insanity. And like you said, there was a huge outrage around the country over this because they felt that you were guilty. How did you feel when you heard not guilty insanity?
On one level, I was elated that it was a not guilty, but on the other level, I knew I'd have to go to St. Elizabeth's Hospital, a mental hospital, and I had a lot of apprehension about going there too. So it wasn't total elation on my part.
Would you have preferred to go to prison or
No, but I mean, I didn't want to go to a mental hospital either. I didn't want to go to a mental hospital either.
Sent to St. Elizabeth for an indefinite amount of treatment.
Right.
Which essentially means you could have spent your entire life in that hospital.
Right, and I had many people over the years tell me that I'd never get out.
Okay, so now you get to this hospital. How similar is it to prison?
Not very similar at all. You're not in a cell. You're in a room on a ward. Constantly mingling with the other patients and the staff. There's TVs on all day long. So it was not really like prison at all.
Okay, but you're not allowed to leave.
Oh no, yeah, there were bars on the window.
Right. So now you start therapy and you start on medication.
Right.
How soon after starting therapy medication you start to realize what you've actually done?
I took a while. I met a woman named Leslie DeVoe early on in my stay, and we became romantic, and she kind of brought me out of my delusions. So I credit her with being the person who really got me well.
Okay, now Leslie DeVoe was there because she had killed her own 10-year-old daughter?
Correct.
What was that situation about?
I can't go into detail about that because I don't know, but she in her illness had killed her 10-year-old daughter and was found not guilty for reason of insanity too. She was sent to St. Elizabeth's about 2 months after I was. We met there.
Up to that point, had you had a romantic relationship with a woman?
I had dates and stuff like that, but not really a long-term relationship. No.
Okay. Do you think that the loneliness of not connecting with a woman led you into that role of where you ended up in?
It certainly had a factor. Yeah.
So now you're in St. Elizabeth and you're taking medication and you're doing therapy, and now you meet a woman and you start a relationship. And was that allowed in the hospital?
It was. They actually liked me having this relationship because they saw how good she was for me. What a good influence she was on me.
Okay. So when do you start to realize how completely irrational the Jodie Foster obsession is?
It took a while, but I took about, through the 1980s. I went to St. Elizabeth's in 1982. It took really most of the 80s to finally totally bring me out of the obsession.
Okay, so by 1990, you realized that you were never going to get what you
Hey, Lane, what's going on, man?
And at that point, had you heard some of the statements that she's made
How you doing, man?
about the situation and so forth?
I think some of them, but not a lot.
Good morning.
Okay. So, you've get
How's your
into
morning
the
going?
90s at St. Elizabeth Hospital with no release date in sight. Now, did you have 2 suicide attempts while in the hospital?
I had one.
What? Okay. What happened?
And that was early on. That was like in the first 6 months, I had a suicide attempt of an overdose of pills. And I see that now as kind of a turning point, because after that, I saw the love of Leslie, and it kind of turned me away from the delusions that I was having, and I really see that suicide attempt as a turning point.
What made you feel at that point that you just want to end it all?
I think I was starting to become clear in my mind that this magical union was not going to happen with Jody.
Okay. And at that point you felt, nah, I'm just going to end it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another odd thing was that evening on TV, the local TV station was showing Taxi Driver. So yeah, I saw a taxi driver the evening of my suicide attempt. One of the last things I did was watch Taxi Driver.
That triggered you?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, at one point you became a pen pal with serial killer Ted Bundy.
That was about 5 years later. Yeah, I had poor judgment, and we had a brief correspondence. Yeah.
Okay. Did you reach out to him or vice versa?
I think I reached out to him. I knew he was on death row, and I reached out to him at death row.
Mom, Travs, what's going on? How you guys doing?
Bundy character at all. Ted Bundy was an actual serial killer. You were in a delusion, and you were going to kill the president for a reason that had nothing to do with what Ted Bundy was doing.
Right.
So, what did you think of Ted Bundy as a person?
Oh, he was horrible. I mean, I think at the very end of his life, I may be mistaken, I think at the end of his life he admitted to all the killings. So he was just a horrible person. But in the mid '80s, I just reached out to him because he was in the news a lot, and with my poor judgment, I just reached out to him.
Well, your romantic relationship while in the hospital, when did that end?
Oh, I had a relationship with Leslie for 22 years. So it wasn't until the 2000s that it ended.
Okay, why did it end?
She was getting hounded by the government because she was my girlfriend. They were going through her trash and her bank records, and she just couldn't deal with all that. So she just said, I gotta end this relationship.
After 22 years?
Yeah.
So, you're still in the same hospital with her?
No, she got out early on. She was only there for 3 years.
Wait, so she gets out after 3 years, but she continues to come back to visit you?
Yes, she did every day.
Every day?
Just about every day.
Wow. So she could have found someone on the outside, but she decided to stay with you?
Yes, she did.
Wow, okay. That sounds like true love then.
Right.
Okay. So, during this time, as you're getting into now decades of being in this hospital, you hear horror stories about these mental institutions. movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where the staff tortures, the patients and so forth. Were you dealing with any level of abuse?
Personally, no. I saw other patients being abused by staff in the way that they had to stay in seclusion for weeks and weeks on end and be shackled up for weeks and weeks on end and tranquilized, to where they could barely even sit up. I personally did not experience that, but I saw it around me.
Okay, is that because that you respected the staff and they really caused any problems?
Right, I was on, not with every staff, but with most staff I was on good terms with.
Okay, but you're also surrounded with people who have severe mental illness, sometimes worse than you.
Oh yeah, almost everybody.
Right. So, what were some of the craziest things that you saw happen in front of you?
Oh, I can't detail them. Just on a daily basis, I saw people in their illness doing a lot of strange things, but I don't want to go into details of what I saw.
Okay. Did you have any physical altercations with the other inmates?
Overall, the years, a few, nothing major, but I was accosted on 2 or 3 occasions.
Was it over the Reagan shooting or just other reasons?
No, just other reasons.
Okay, so by 2016, you're age 61, a federal judge ruled that you could be released to live with your mother in Virginia, but under very strict conditions. You have to continue therapy, medication, monitoring, and the restrictions on travel and internet use. Now, you're 61 years old at the time. You've been in there for 30-something years?
34, 35 years.
34 and 35 years. Leading up to this, did you think you were ever getting out?
I did. I always held out hope. As I said, I had many people over the years tell me I would never get out, but I always held out hope, and I always had faith in myself, faith in God, that I would get out one day.
Leading up to this, I know that President Reagan did an interview about the whole situation. President Reagan did an interview about the whole situation. You ever watch that interview?
Not at the time. I've seen it since, but not when it first came out.
When you watch that interview now, what do you think?
He was very generous to me in his thoughts, and I heard that he wanted to meet me, have a meeting with me at the hospital, but the staff at the hospital turned it down, which I wish they hadn't done.
So, after surgery, he wanted to meet with you in person?
Yes, he did.
Wow. Okay. And you would have done it?
Certainly.
Had you sat in front of the president at that moment with the same mind state that you had at that time, what would you have told him? Well,
this was years later. This wasn't right after the shooting. This was like years later. I heard that he wanted to meet me, and I just would have, asked his forgiveness and, told him that I was so sorry for what I had done, and I always had respect and admiration for him.
How did you feel when he passed away?
I was sad. He had quite a life.
So, in 2016, you get out to live with your mother. How did that feel to walk out of that hospital after 35 years?
Well, I wasn't just one day I walked out the door. I had gradual releases up to that point. My judge was giving me gradual releases of 3 days, 6 days, 9 days. So I was getting acclimated to the community over a period of time. So by 2016, I was already spending a good deal of time out in the community.
Okay. And then by September 2021, you're 66 years old at the time, the court approved an unconditional release, which took effect June 2022. Be 67 at that time. And at that point, by June 2022, you were completely free of the court system.
That's correct.
How did that feel?
That felt great. It took 41 years, but I finally had my total freedom. And I was elated then, yes.
Okay. So you're now free, but during that whole time leading up to the court dropping everything, you still had to be under therapy and under medication. And are you still on medication now?
I am, but it's voluntary.
Okay, what medication are you on?
I'm on Zoloft and something called risperidone.
What does that do to you?
Zoloft is an antidepressant. It's also good for anxiety if you have anxiety. So I've just been on Zoloft for quite a while, and risperidone is an antipsychotic.
Antipsychotic, okay. Do you feel that if you stop both medications that you might go into a delusion again?
No.
Why is that?
I just think I've regained my sanity, and I don't stop the medications because I think they're helpful, but I don't worry about if I had to go off the medications that I'd get sick again. I just don't think I would.
Well, now you live by yourself in Virginia with your cat, Theo.
2 cats.
2 cats, okay. Do people in your town know who you are and your background and so forth?
Yes.
How does it feel when they walk up to you and sometimes have conversations about this?
When I'm out and about in stores, especially a grocery store, I have people come up to me, and they're always friendly, and they want to get a picture with me or shake my hand, and I'm fine with that. So far I haven't really had anyone come up to me, in a negative way.
Well, in 2025, you wrote a book, John Hinckley Jr., Who I Really Am.
Yes.
What made you write the book?
There's just been such a negative image of me for so many years, for 45 years, and I got approached by a writer who asked me if I wanted to collaborate on a memoir, and I thought about it, and I said, well, okay, I'll do that. I just wanted to tell my side of what happened throughout my life, to show people that I'm not the way that I was in 1981, that I'm a totally different person, and hopefully that comes out in the book.
How did you feel after actually writing the book and putting it all out there and so forth? You had done some interviews here and there, but this is the first time you actually put the whole story out there.
Right. It's my memoir, and so it's a good feeling to get my story out there. If anybody wants to read my life story from my point of view, they can go on Amazon and buy the book.
Well, on July 13th, 2024, Donald Trump was shot at and he was grazed. When you saw that situation, and it resembles what happened with you, what did you think?
I was sorry to see it happen, Somebody alerted me to turn on the TV, and I turned it on and I saw what was going on. I was sorry to see it happen because I think that was the first major assassination attempt since mine. So a lot of time had passed, but I just wish it hadn't happened.
Well, then on September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was killed during a presentation. Now, he wasn't a president, but he was a political figure, and very decisive at that. What did you think of that situation?
Well, I didn't really know hardly anything about him. I think I knew his name, but I wasn't following him at all. So I had to kind of be brought up to speed as to who he was and what that was all about. But once again, I was sorry to see it happen because, it's just a tragedy for his family and his supporters.
Well, you see these types of situations. For example, Luigi Mangione, who ended up killing the United Healthcare CEO in New York City. It seems like these shootings, whether they're successful or not, are caused by delusion, caused by someone thinking that there's a higher purpose to all this, and the world's going to somehow come together, and some magical things are going to appear, they're going to get away with it, and so forth. And sometimes people get arrested, other times people get shot dead. for example, like in the Trump situation, when you see these types of delusionary events happen, can you relate to them?
Not really, because the shootings that have happened lately, I don't think they claim mental illness of any kind. It's more of just a deliberate act on their part, and I can't really relate to them at all. No.
Well, I mean, it's all very sad situations. And when you describe how you thought that after the shooting, somehow Jodie Foster would appear and all the charges would be dropped and the world would embrace you and love you and so forth, I think there's probably some similarities with what these people are doing, because whether you want to admit it or not, at the point that you pick up a gun and you plan on shooting someone, especially a high-profile person like a president or a major political speaker, you're not going to get away with it.
Right.
At all. You're either going to get killed on the scene, like Trump's shooter was, or you're going to be arrested and you'll be doing life in prison, or you might even get the death penalty depending on where you are. When you look at all the people, had you had any of the families from any of the victims ever reach out to you?
No, I mean, for many years, one of my court orders was that I could not contact the victims. So I didn't reach out to them, and they have not reached out to me.
If the victim sat down next to you right now, what would you tell them?
I would just say I'm so sorry for what happened. If I could take it all back, I would. I mean, I'm sure that the words would be ring kind of hollow to them, but it's my true belief that I'm so sorry for what happened. I wish it hadn't happened.
If you could have done something different leading up to the shooting, what would you have done?
Not get estranged from my family. I pushed away my family. They didn't push me away. I pushed them away, and that was one of my main mistakes, was being estranged from my family.
Do you think that if you had stayed closer to your family, you might have gotten on medication at that point? Were you on medication at all leading up to this?
No. I was on Valium.
Okay, well that is a medication.
Yeah, I was on Valium.
Okay, but had you gotten closer to your family, do you think that you could have actually gotten on medication that could have curbed this whole situation?
I just think they would have helped me over time, and could have avoided what happened. Yeah, but I just kept pushing them away, unfortunately.
Well, John Hinckley Jr., I appreciate you coming in and telling your story. A very tragic situation, but I think that this really illustrates how serious a mental health crisis can go. And I think especially during that time, which was 1981, I think that mental health wasn't taken very seriously at all. I think people were just called crazy and they'd have to deal with it. And from what I understand, your family actually made changes in the mental health system after your shooting.
Right.
What exactly did they change?
Well, my father started something called the American Mental Health Fund, where they raised money to bring awareness to mental illness and trying to find a cure for it. And also my verdict caused a major change in the insanity defense, to where now it's much more difficult to win on the insanity defense because of my verdict.
So had you been tried today, you probably would have gotten life in prison.
Probably so. It's very difficult to get not guilty by reason of insanity now.
Well, final question. There are a lot of people that are going to be watching this that are going through serious mental health issues, dealing with delusions and coming up with ideas that ultimately are going to have very bad consequences. From someone that's gone through it before, what would you tell people like this that are going through this?
To try to stay connected to your family and your friends and not push them away and become isolated. Isolation was one of the worst things that happened to me. So don't push your family and friends away. If you have a faith, keep your faith in God. That's another thing that happened, is I pushed God away, and you should never do that. So just try and have a faith in God and believe that your family and your friends are going to be there for you.
John Hinckley Jr., thank you for sharing your story. Obviously, what you did was very serious, but you spent 35 years in a mental health facility. You had medication, you had treatment. It seems like you're very well balanced right now, and you've paid your debt to society, and you seem very remorseful over what you did. Final question before I let you go. Jodie Foster was caught in the middle of this whole thing by no reason of her own. If Jodie Foster were to sit down next to you right now, what would you tell her? Because she's still alive.
I would just tell her I'm sorry that I brought her into such an ugly situation. She didn't deserve it. She was an 18-year-old girl, trying to start her college career, still making movies, and I would just tell her I'm so sorry for bringing her into such a awful situation.
Well, that's what it is. John Hinckley Jr., appreciate you coming. Wish you all the best.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Breaking news tonight, another popular food chain now pulling produce over concerns of salmonella. Tex-Mex chain Qdoba removing jalapenos just hours after Chipotle took similar action. The case is now expanding to 4 states. We'll tell you where, plus the popular vacation destination sounding the alarm over a stomach parasite possibly linked to lettuce. New details on the security threat and growing from Baltimore heading this visit. The guns they found, what we're learning about the close call the president's helicopter had coming near a commercial plane. Deadly house explosion in Illinois community rocked by a fiery blast. Debris sent soaring. Nearby homes damaged, plus breaking apartment building erupting in flames after a major explosion. The big win for progressives in the battle for the future of the Democratic Party. While President Trump says it's good news for Republicans. Attack in paradise. A little boy nearly mauled to death by dogs while he was on vacation to the Bahamas, airlifted back to the U.S. His parents speaking out about how he survived. Unzipping the constant denial, and the man who lost so much weight on the GM-2012, his insurer said that no longer covered because he's no longer overweight. Chilling doorbell video of a teen in a clown costume. Broken in Illinois neighborhood, a man found stabbed to death with Roman after. Police rushed in to save a man swarmed by hundreds of bees. Singing icon Barry Manilow canceling the show just before stepping on stage. We'll tell you why. Nightly News starts right now. Hey, good evening. Great to be with you on this Wednesday. Evening tonight with that dangerous salmonella outbreak rapidly spreading to nearly 7 states. And health officials now looking into the second Mexican restaurant chain. The outbreak is beginning to kill hundreds of people, dozens of them now hospitalized. The restaurant chain Qdoba tonight saying it's proactively rushing to remove jalapenos from hundreds of its locations. This coming after Chipotle moved to pull the hot green pepper from thousands of its own restaurants. The illness is stretching all across the country. You see it right here, including hundreds of cases now in Minnesota and also tonight Colorado. The outbreak, just the latest foodborne illness to hit Americans. A parasite linked to lettuce putting hundreds in the hospital and killing at least 2 people since May. Ann Thompson following all of this for us. She starts us off.
The issue of tainted jalapenos is much bigger than just Minnesota and Chipotle. Tonight, the CDC saying 27 states now reporting salmonella cases related to the peppers. Minnesota, Colorado, and Illinois topping the list. More than 300 people sick and 36 hospitalized. Now another fast food chain, Qdoba, says it proactively removed jalapenos from its restaurants, saying safety is our highest priority. Yesterday, Chipotle did the same after Minnesota officials traced many of their salmonella cases to a lot of peppers used by the chain. Chipotle said it replaced the suspect jalapenos with ones from different growers. How do peppers get salmonella?
Typically through a variety of ways, but most likely contaminated water that is used to irrigate or come into contact with that food.
Unlike the lettuce-linked cyclosporiasis triggered by a parasite, salmonella is a bacteria that causes fever, stomach cramps, and diarrhea. Symptoms most people develop within 8 to 72 hours of eating the bad food. These high-profile outbreaks involving three popular fast food chains, Taco Bell for the lettuce, Chipotle and Qdoba for the jalapenos, have some concern about our nation's food supply.
We have to remind ourselves that our food supply is fairly safe, but things happen. Accidents happen, contamination certainly can happen at any point in the food supply.
All right, with that, Ann Thompson joins us now live, and I know you have another update, and it looks like there's a new sort of lettuce-linked outbreak involving a popular tourist destination in Mexico.
That's right. You remember the lettuce we were concerned with in this country was grown in Mexico. And now Mexican health authorities are testing water, vegetables, and fruit in Quintana Roo. That's the state that includes Cancun. They're testing those at 16 hotels where tourists got sick from cyclospora.
All right, I'm really careful out there, Andrew. Thank you for that. We have new reporting tonight on the man arrested, that alarming security scare from President Trump. The suspect, a Marine veteran who had an arsenal of weapons. Here's Gary Hayes.
Tonight, new details about the man facing firearms charges following an alarming security scare outside President Trump's golf club near Los Angeles. Police arresting 39-year-old Janine John Teal over the weekend ahead of the president's visit after federal agents noted him appearing to take photos and videos in the club. Charging documents say a search of his car turned up a pistol and high-capacity magazine. At his home, an assault rifle, body armor, and notebooks containing, quote, concerning statements. Tonight, a law enforcement official telling NBC News Teal is a disabled Marine veteran with significant PTSD and mental health issues. President Trump was asked about the arrest.
Well, the only thing I get a little solace from is they say only consequential presidents. And I should have been consequential.
After a disturbing series of assassination attempts against President Trump, including an armed suspect racing through a security checkpoint at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, a suspect arrested after hiding the rifle while the president was golfing, and a campaign event in Butler where the president was shot. And tonight, new concerns after a close encounter between Marine One and a commercial airliner. You can see the American Airlines jet taking off. Moments later, the Marine chopper, one of them carrying the president. The FAA calling this a, quote, momentary loss of separation, saying it will review the incident, but that the president was never in any danger.
Garrett joins us now. Garrett, let's go back to that security scare for the president in California. I know you have some new reporting on that suspect.
And Tom, his first court appearance has yet to be scheduled, but his military record today shows 8 years of service in the Marines, including deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan. Tom?
All right, Garrett Hakeforth, Garrett, we thank you for that. In Illinois, authorities tonight investigating what caused a home to explode in an instant, leveling it to the foundation and costing one man his life. Maggie Vespa has the images.
A deadly explosion in southern Illinois, tearing apart a home, catapulting pieces of it high into the air. The power of that blast. Captured from multiple cameras nearby, absolutely decimating one house and damaging several others. It happened Tuesday evening in the small village of Energy.
I've never heard it sound like that in my entire life. Like it was enormous, but it's like you could feel it in your body.
The Sanford dad lives across the street. When you walked out and saw your neighbor's home, what went through your mind?
Utter sadness. You knew that no one could survive that.
She immediately thought of her neighbor, 78-year-old Dave Turner. Authorities confirming today he did not survive.
He took a lot of pride in caring for his property and his neighbors, and it's very tragic.
The local sheriff telling me a second person was injured, and the explosion appears to have been an accident.
We're investigating from all aspects, but we do believe it's an accident, likely caused by natural gas or propane type explosion.
Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
And we're also following a deadly explosion right here in New York in the Bronx and an apartment building. One person now confirmed dead and 15 more injured from a blast that blew the doors off and collapsed a part of an entire floor. 6 of the injured were firefighters. No word yet on what caused this blast. We want to turn out of politics, and the big win for progressives in Michigan's high-stakes Senate race there. Part of a wave of primary victories for candidates backed by Democratic socialists. Here's Shaquille Grizzly.
Tonight, the latest big win for progressives in the battle for the future of the Democratic Party. In the words of Muhammad Ali, who shook up the world, Abdul El-Sayed overcoming record spending, dealing another major blow to the party's establishment. With NBC News projecting his narrow victory against moderate Congresswoman Haley Stevens in Michigan's bitter Senate primary, El-Sayed insisting he can now unite divided Democrats.
Sometimes, intra-family squabbles are the biggest ones. But we all know that when we walk out the house, we stand united.
Tonight, Stevens posting, "I spoke with Abdul a few moments ago to offer him my full support." But Stevens and other establishment Democrats had argued El-Sayed's views could be too liberal to win in November if state President Trump won twice. El-Sayed is backed by top Democratic socialists and supports Medicare for all, abolishing ICE, and intensely criticizes Israel. He's also been criticized for campaigning with controversial left-wing podcaster Hassan Piker, who said America deserved the 9/11 terror attack. El-Sayed says he disagrees, but would not disavow Piker's views. President Trump posting El-Sayed's nomination is great news for the Republican Party.
Abdul El-Sayed, lovely gentleman. The man of hate.
GOP nominee Mike Rogers hitting hard.
I have never seen someone so radical, so extreme, get nominated by a political party. The Democrat Party is lost to this hardcore socialist attitude.
But tonight, El-Sayed firing back.
My name is not raising no gas prices.
Accusing Rogers of using his Arabic name as a line of attack.
They think they want to use my whole name against Mike. Listen, man, if you can't say the name, I'll tell you that. Use the name out the damn mouth.
And Tom, similar fights between progressive and establishment-backed Democrats will play out next week in states like Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Tom, it'll be a heated race going into November. Okay, Shaq, we thank you for that. Next to a vacation night with our family taking a trip to the Bahamas, their 9-year-old son viciously attacked by a gang of dogs while he was playing on the beach. George Solis spoke with his parents, and a warning, some of the images are graphic.
Our son is alive. Couldn't every single person.
Tonight, the parents of 9-year-old Bo Pratt, emotional yet resilient as her son recovers from a vicious dog attack in the Bahamas.
He was looking into my eyes, asking me if he was going to die.
Aliette Trains and Michael Bratton have been at Bo's bedside after the July 28th attack during a family getaway at a popular tourist beach. The energetic and curious 9-year-old on the beach looking to collect sand for hermit crabs he had caught the night before. The family says a pack of dogs began their assault.
Damn.
What do you remember hearing that morning when this happened?
It wasn't so much the hearing as it was the scene. I ran to him immediately, screaming his name at a pitch that I probably never had to use in my life.
This video capturing Bo on a stretcher as he was flown by the U.S. Coast Guard to Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. That's his father right there with him, telling him, Bo, rise up, buddy, look at me, okay? I'm here with you. The brutal attack left Bo with injuries to his limbs, face, neck, and the loss of a portion of his scalp. The severity has led to 3 surgeries so far. According to Bahamian authorities, a man has been arrested and charged in connection with the attack. Tonight, the family remains optimistic and grateful.
If there had been one thing that didn't go as planned from the moment of the incident to the moment of his arrival to the hospital, I don't know if we would be sitting here right now.
Bo has a lengthy and costly recovery ahead, and that suspect facing multiple charges, including negligently causing grievous harm. Tom, we hope that little boy can recover from that vicious attack. George Solis for us on that one. When we return in 60 seconds, he lost 80 pounds taking Zepbound, but his insurance stopped covering it because he was no longer overweight. Plus, police rushing to save a man after he was attacked by a swarm of bees. We're back now with our series, The Cost of Denial. Tonight, Liz Croyt's on a hotly debated question. Should popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs be covered after the weight comes off?
This improves my sleep, this improves my energy.
For Sacramento Sheriff's Deputy William Meehan, the GLP-1 drug Zepbound changed just about everything. His sleep apnea is gone, and he's down from 250 pounds to 170.
My appetite just got to a level where I felt like my meal was done, and I could just live normally.
But now William is caught up in the insurance industry's debate over whether and when to cover weight loss drugs. When he recently went to renew his prescription, he was told this.
You are denied because your current BMI is under 30. To be on this medication, your BMI has to be greater than 30.
Essentially, Williams' insurer, Sutter Health, which initially covered the Zepbound for sleep apnea, told him he no longer qualified because he lost so much weight, his body mass index was now too low.
30% BMI is around 200 pounds for me.
You feel like you're being encouraged to gain weight right now?
I do. By the way I interpret it is that Sutter Health wants me to be 200 pounds to stay on this medication. And I don't think that's anyone's recommendation.
It's something many people on GLP-1s are now facing when it comes to renewal.
It's a real challenge right now to keep the drug for maintenance. Yes.
Professor Lisa Kroon runs the Medication Outcome Center at UC San Francisco. She believes insurers should treat GLP-1s like maintenance drugs, the way they do blood pressure or cholesterol medication, but says the cost of these drugs, along with their exponential popularity, has led to a gray area in many health plans.
Can the insurance companies afford this, to pay for all of these people to have this drug for the rest of their lives? That's the challenge. Some health plans had to increase the BMI to cover them just because they were costing millions, tens of millions of dollars to a large health plan.
Her advice, be persistent. That's exactly what William did. He appealed and appealed again, and finally turned to NBC News. Within weeks of us reaching out to Sutter Health to ask about his case, William received a notice that he was now approved.
I think the only reason that I was approved for this is because the Conflict Now and NBC reached out and asked, what's going on? Why isn't it getting approved?
But Sutter Health told us the prior denials were due to an administrative submission error on the part of Williams' doctor, who also works for Sutter Health, saying that the initial request was denied as submitted under the obstructive sleep apnea indication, while the subsequent request was approved under the separate weight management indication.
We also reached out to Williams' doctor for clarification, but received no response. Sutter added that no exception was made for William, but also noted that his approval should not be interpreted as a universal policy applying to all Sutter members.
There might be people who are like, well, you've lost the weight, you've changed your lifestyle, why do you need the drug anymore? Is it just for vanity reasons?
I don't do it as for vanity reasons. I think that this genuinely has improved my health. I don't want to go back to being heavier and unhealthier.
Liz joins us now. Liz, there are conflicting studies about weight gain when people get off GLP-1s.
Yeah, Tom, that's right. There's a real mix of data here. Some studies do show people gain the weight back if they go off these drugs, but also 3 recent studies now show as many as 70% of patients have been able to keep the weight off for up to 2 years. Tom?
Liz Coyne's for us. Liz, thank you. We're going to be back in a moment with this terrifying image. A teenager dressed as a clown arrested in connection with a deadly stabbing in that same neighborhood. That's next. We're back now with wildly police body cam video showing officers rushing into a swarm of bees to save a man's life. You can see him there struggling on the ground with officers lifting him into their vehicle while they all get swarmed and stung by those bees. We're told the man and the officers were treated at the hospital and are now recovering. Also tonight, terrifying video of a teen dressed as a clown peering into homes. You see him there looking into a doorbell camera saying, quote, "I have a gift for you." Later that night, police took that teen into custody in connection with the fatal stabbing of a 78-year-old man in East St. Louis, Illinois. And there's new concern for music icon Barry Manilow after he abruptly postponed his Lexington, Kentucky concert last night, minutes before the show, without providing more details. Manilow was diagnosed with lung cancer last December, forcing him to delay some shows while he underwent treatment. That's Nightly News for this Wednesday. I'm Todd Gamos. Thanks so much for watching. Tonight, and always, we're here for you. Good night. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.
Breaking news tonight, police releasing 2 ransom notes in connection to the Nancy Guthrie case. What they revealed, the new details in the notes that may be from whoever kidnapped Nancy 6 months ago. The heartbreaking update in one of them, and the stunning apology. Why police are releasing the notes now.
Also breaking tonight, the fiery jet crash at a military base in San Diego. Look at that, an F-35 hitting the ground and bursting into flames. The pilot ejecting. What went wrong? The surprise reversal just in. The Trump administration dropping the case against an Olympian accused of vandalizing the reflecting pool. What the government just admitted. The new warning that America's water supply may be at risk for cyber attacks. The FBI describing attempts on 7 states already, and the controversial finger pointing from President Trump on who's to blame. Migrant crisis chaos. New video from the Spanish enclave. Cars torched after tens of thousands of people raced to cross the border from Morocco. The deadly rush killing dozens. Former NFL star Tony Romo now on leave from his on-air role after his arrest. The former pro player replacing him for now. New video of a building.
Keeping an eye on some developments in this high-profile murder case out of South Florida. We've talked about Courtney Clenny before, who is an OnlyFans model who was charged with the murder of her boyfriend and has now, according to reports, accepted a plea deal in this case. And so joining us live now to talk about this, what she makes of it, where things go from here. We are pleased to be joined by A.B. Perez, who is a legal analyst and a content creator. You know, A.B. to the 7th Power on YouTube. A.B., always good talking with you. Thanks for joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back. We have another wild case coming out of Florida that is coming to resolution.
There's always a wild case out of Florida for us to talk about, A.B. But this is interesting. I'm curious. I just want to get your initial thoughts and your reaction to the news of the plea deal. Did that surprise you at all?
Yes, I think a lot of people in the legal community are surprised. Courtney has had her case moved, or at least the part of the trial moved several times this year. We're actually supposed to start in April of 2026, and then it got moved and delayed until August, and, you know, we've been kind of waiting. Saying in 2025, this case has moved several times. You know, things like continuances, you know, there were her parents that were involved in an unrelated charge, tied to Christian Openselli, a victim in this case, for a long time. So there has been an ongoing, almost 3-year feud to get this to trial. So no one expected that she was actually going to accept a plea deal this early on. And the details of that plea deal are still yet to be seen. Christian Openselli's family released a statement over the weekend, basically saying that they worked with the prosecution's office and the defendant herself on this plea deal. And Christian Openselli's family also has a civil litigation with the due diligence that the couple lived in. So I wonder how all of this is going to play out. As of right now, August 10th, next Monday, at 10:30 a.m., I believe, is where she is going to formally accept the plea, get the details on what terms are included in the plea. What exactly is she pleading guilty to? So it's going to be a very interesting week.
There's no doubt about that. You talked about the kind of the battles to get to trial. So what do you think then maybe changed? What part of this equation changed maybe then to precipitate a plea deal, even though we don't know the terms right now? What do you think may happen to make this kind of deal become reality?
Yeah, I believe there's likely some sort of evidence. Courtney Clenny's posture in this case is that she was acting in self-defense, right? To the point where they were starting to look at expert witnesses that were going to testify at trial. Some of them being blood splatter experts, knife throwing experts as well. It's one of those things where the self-defense theory, we also have evidence showing in Courtney Clenny being violent with Christian on an elevator, right? About 2 months before he came to, you know, his unfortunate passing. But it is one of those things where evidence has been a problem in this case from the beginning. It took 6 months for her to actually be arrested. She was extradited from Hawaii. So after, you know, April 2026, when Christian passed, And I wonder if evidence this close to trial kind of shatters that self-defense theory that she had.
I want you to put your lawyer hat on for us here, and like you said, we don't know right now what the terms of this plea deal might be. But if you had to kind of speculate, to guess, what do you think would be some of the terms that we could expect to see in a plea deal? Knowing what we know about this case.
Yeah, so when it comes to murder, there's different layers of it, right? Murder in the first degree, you have second degree murder, you also have manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. I'm guessing we might land in that realm, very similar to the Julia case with the Alicia. Not necessarily having first degree murder, but the jury, significantly decreased that down to manslaughter. So I'm guessing we might land in the manslaughter realm, but at the same time, there's still some information that needs to come out, because when it comes to these plea deals, they're highly structured. The DA's office will say, here is, we'll give you credit for time served. Here is what you need to plead guilty to. If there's a remainder of time that's, going to be served as well, probation, there are things that are going to be outlined, but many folks in the legal community are anxious to take a look at what the actual filing looks like.
I'm sure. Now, she was facing potential life in prison, so what do you think is, a prison sentence might look like in this case, assuming that is part of this?
Yeah, so looking at the time that she's already done, she's been in prison jail since 2022. She could have the 4 years credited, right? But I do think that she could be somewhere in the 10 to 15 realm with the 4 years that she's already done.
And you mentioned the statement from the victim's family. What is their kind of stance on this? Just going to that again, what the reaction we're hearing from them and their role in this?
Yeah. So they released a statement on Saturday. It was fairly brief, but what was revealing is that they have been working with the prosecution's office for a resolution here, and it looks like this could have been played within the last week or so. Again, we still have that second civil matter. This is a criminal matter, but there is a civil matter as well, where the family is suing the one Carrizo building in the Edgewater community where the couple actually resided. So I wonder if there's some cross connection between that, but they have been working very closely with the district attorney's office to come to a resolution.
For those who don't know, AD, is that common for family to work with prosecutors when it comes to plea deals in cases like this?
It really depends. It really depends. I mean, the prosecution's office always wants justice for the victims and their families. However, folks do have to understand that prosecutors, they're attorneys for the state, right? So if someone breaks a law within the state, their job is to get justice and charge those folks accordingly. So it really depends on the state. There's 50 of them. Everybody operates differently. But it does seem as if the family here was working very closely with the state, especially with that statement coming out on Saturday.
So what are you going to be watching for? Obviously looking for the filings and for the details to come out about this, but what will you be looking for when it comes to this case moving forward and what might come out about this plea deal?
Yes, so next Monday we will see the plea deal itself, exactly what she's pleaded guilty to, and then we're also going to see the sentencing immediately afterward. So that's all happening in one hearing. We're going to be watching for what the actual sentence is going to be, and I'm more curious about the evidence that has, kind of spooked this team, or at least changed the defendant's mind to take the plea deal, because half of the time people start to, defendants are in jail for such a long time, they start to get worn down and tired of waiting, and with all this case almost 4 years in the making, that's quite a bit of time waiting to go to trial.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's been something to watch, and will continue to be so. August 10th, as you said, that's the next court date where we'll learn some more details about this. A.B. Perez, a legal analyst, a content creator, A.B. to the 7th Power on YouTube. We always appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much for sharing your analysis and perspective with us here on Fox 35 News Plus today.
Anytime.
Not guilty of all charges.
More than a decade after college student Faith Hedgepeth was found allegedly brutally raped and murdered in her North Carolina apartment, investigators believe they may have finally found her killer.
And we all want this trial to be fair and impartial because there's a lot at stake here.
As the suspect's trial gets closer, attorneys for the prosecution and the defense are battling it out in pre-trial hearings. We are taking a closer look at the background of this case and how a judge's decisions ahead of trial could impact a jury. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. Jessica. In September of 2012, 19-year-old Faith Hedgepeth was entering her third year at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She was staying temporarily with a friend in a one-bedroom apartment off campus. And that is where her body was found on September 7th. On the night that she died, Faith had a packed schedule that really highlighted college life. According to the timeline that police put together, she went to an event at a sorority, Alpha Pi Omega, went to the library to study, and then returned to her apartment and got ready to go out to a local nightclub that allowed anyone 18 and up. The roommate says that they went home at around 3 a.m. and Faith reportedly went to bed. What happened from there became a mystery that wouldn't have answers for years, or potential answers for years. According to police, her roomie, Karina Rosario, told police that after they got back to the apartment, she ended up leaving again around 4:30 a.m. That she and another friend, Marisol Rangel, came back at around 11 a.m. and found Faith. And then almost exactly 9 years to the day, there was finally a huge break in this case. Using genetic genealogy, which we've talked about before on this show, which helps connect law enforcement with potential suspects through their relatives, Chapel Hill police got a DNA match, a potential DNA match. And it was not who they may have expected. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. But I want to go back to 2012 at the beginning of the investigation, because this is what a police warrant application said about the discovery of the homicide on September 7th. Quote, when officers arrived, they were greeted by the primary attendant, Karina Lynn Rosario, who advised that she had seen the victim, Faith Hedgepeth, and that she was unresponsive. Rosario permitted officers to enter the apartment. Officers conducted initial protective sweep and located Hedgepeth dead in a bedroom on a bed face up. Miss Hedgepeth's body was hanging off the bed over a pool of blood with her black shirt pulled up over her head. She had no clothes on from the waist down. There was blood spatter on the closet, and a used feminine product was lying beside her on the bed. According to police, in the center of the bed was a note, seemingly written in pen on a white takeout food bag, and it said, quote, I'm not stupid, word, jealous. An autopsy, according to the Daily Tar Heel, found that Faith was beaten to death. You were talking serious blunt force trauma to her head. The News and Observer reports that investigators believe she was hit repeatedly with an empty Bacardi rum bottle, which reportedly had blood and tissue on it. All right, real quick before we jump into this any further, I just got to call something out. I think it is really important. The Medicare annual enrollment period is right around the corner, and if you or someone you love is on Medicare, you really should pay attention, because the truth is Medicare can be really frustrating and honestly pretty confusing. Millions of seniors are on the wrong Medicare plan and they don't even know it. That is why I'm telling you about Chapter. Chapter has unbiased, independent Medicare advisors who are salary-based and not paid on commission, so they're not trying to sell you something. They help you understand your options and find the plan that best fits your needs. The call is completely free. There's no pressure to enroll in anything. If you're already on the right plan, they'll tell you that. If there's a better option for your situation, they'll walk you through it step by step. Most people can review their options in under 20 minutes, and historically, seniors who have worked with Chapter, they have saved an average of more than $1,100 a year. So don't guess when it comes to your Medicare coverage. Call Chapter today at 845-493-3791. Again, that's 845-493-3791 to speak with a real person who can help you understand your options. Call WRAL's News reports that police found semen on Faith. For law enforcement, they wouldn't confirm publicly if she'd been sexually assaulted. And as officers dug into Faith's life to try to understand what was going on here, there was someone who quickly shot at the top of the person of interest list.
a man named Eric McCoy Jones. Now, Jones had apparently dated Faith's roommate, Karina, but they'd broken up reportedly after there'd been some domestic violence in the relationship, or at least that was the allegation. In fact, Faith allegedly encouraged Karina to take out a restraining order against Jones. Here's what a warrant application says about how he came into focus. His name is redacted from the report that they're talking about Jones. Quote, the Chapel Hill Police Department received a call on September 9, 2012 from a woman who was a former roommate of Hedgepeth. The former roommate stated that sometime between the months of May to July 2012, Hedgepeth told her that Jones hated her, Hedgepeth, and told her he was going to kill her, Hedgepeth, if Rosario did not get back together with him. Through preliminary investigation, Affiant learned that a restraining order was issued against Jones by Rosario on July 11, 2012. The basis of the restraining order was a domestic assault which officers with the Chapel Hill Police Department responded on July 11, 2012. In this incident, Jones kicked 2 doors in the apartment off their frame. As a part of this investigation, Affiant also received several accounts of Rosario being seen with visible injuries to her body that were reportedly inflicted by Jones. Affiant learned through further investigation that Jones resented Hedgepeth because of her influence over Rosario. Several witnesses also advised that Jones considered Hedgepeth as a barrier to their relationship. After the interview was complete, Jones returned to the crime scene and walked right up to the crime scene gate. Officers had to ask him to leave because Rosario's 50B was still active against Jones and she needed to return to her apartment. Now, investigators, they also heard from another anonymous source that Jones had reportedly texted them the day before the homicide asking for forgiveness. He also allegedly updated his social media with this statement, quote, Dear Lord, forgive me for all of my sins and the sins I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and the ones who wish me dead today. Jones apparently told detectives he last saw Faith at the nightclub, but Jones's DNA, here's the kicker, not a match for the semen found at the crime scene. So investigators, they were back to square one. According to warrant application, security video from the Grill nightclub, which we were talking about, apparently showed Faith and Karina interacting with a few other people. So officers could track down all these men. They request DNA samples from them. But again, continued to hit dead ends. 2016. Police released a composite sketch that was created by Paravet Nanolabs. It's based on the suspect's DNA. It's called phenotyping. It reportedly indicated that the suspect was likely Latino with olive-colored skin, brown or hazel eyes, black hair. And then you go to 2021. This is when law enforcement held a news conference to announce that they had made an arrest in Faith's murder. Miguel Salguero Olivares, the now 33-year-old, hadn't been on their radar at all. Officials reportedly obtained his DNA during a DUI investigation a few days before the announcement, and that is when they matched it, or apparently matched it, to the sample at the scene.
But we understand that nothing can fill the holes in your hearts. We hope that knowing that a suspect has been arrested and is off the street reassures you that we are one step closer to justice for Faith. Sometimes justice is swift, other times it takes longer. Today, after 9 years and a week, an arrest has been made in the murder of Faith Hedgepeth. Today's important announcement proves the power of partnership, persistence, and the potency of DNA.
Any connection between Salguero Olivares and Faith, it's still unclear. It's still a mystery. And it has now been 5 years since that arrest. 14 years since Faith's tragic death. And this man is finally going to trial. His attorney entered a not guilty plea on his behalf to 4 charges: murder, rape, sexual offense, and burglary, all the first degree. Jury selection is supposed to start in September. But even before that, attorneys were in court this week to go over the very important pre-trial motions. These motions that will dictate what a trial will look like, right? What evidence can come in, what has to be considered. And I really want to dig into some of these requests because it puts specific parts of the investigation in the spotlight. It highlights how it can be difficult to try cold cases or cases that stretch back years. And one of the first motions that was heard this week was a request to keep the jury from seeing certain analysis reports, because the prosecutor here, Angela Garcia Lamarca, told the court that different agencies involved in this investigation tried all these different lines of inquiry, some of them unconventional, to try to solve this case. But that didn't necessarily mean that those attempts to gather information would hold up under the scrutiny of the court. And in an interesting twist, defense attorney James Rainsford said they had no problem with the state's request. Take a listen.
At some point during the investigation of this case, which began in 2012, and I think it might help at this point just to provide a little context for the history of the investigation of this case. And so, Your Honor, the crime of election occurred September 7th, 2012. Chapel Hill PD started investigating. The autopsy was completed by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, who did, among other things, collect evidence, forensic evidence as part of a sexual assault kit. That kit was then analyzed by the North Carolina Crime Lab, and a suspect DNA profile was identified. That suspect DNA profile was then determined to be present on other parts of the crime scene, not just inside the victim's body. Chapel Hill PD, eventually along with our State Bureau of Investigation, ended up conducting dozens of DNA buccal swabs of men in the tri-state area. For the court's reference, the crime lab has more DNA analysis for this case than in the history of the crime lab. They were not able to find a match to the suspect profile that was on the victim and in the crime scene. And they continue to investigate. Not finding the DNA match, they continue to sort of circle back to some of their hunches. They were following the evidence, in one direction and in another direction. And at a point, they began doing some things that were unconventional. One of those things was to submit a 911 call that was placed by the roommate of the deceased, who is Faith Hedgepath. She's the victim of this case, rather than deceased. And her roommate, Karina Rosario, was the first to find her, along with their friend, Marcel Romeo. When Karina called 911, that recording escaped. And Chapel Hill PD sent that recording to someone named Mark Bush in an attempt to find anything, any kind of direction, sense of lead that might take them to the suspect whose DNA would match theirs. Unfortunately, Your Honor, Mr. Bush is really not qualified under the law of North Carolina to offer an expert opinion. If I may approach after listening to the 911 call, he formed opinions based solely on, quote, an examination of the language used by the subject in that one 911 call. Even assuming argument that scientifically reliable opinion could be formed based upon linguistic choices, Mr. Bush's analysis is not based on sufficient facts or data. He didn't know anything about the circumstances surrounding the call. He didn't know anything about the people involved. He didn't know anything about the caller's normal speech patterns or other information that would help him to reliably interpret that caller's language. It is not the product of reliable principles or methods within the meaning of Rule 2. This would be subsection number 2. Rather than employing a methodology that's been objectively tested, independently validated, subjected to meaningful peer review, or generally accepted within the scientific or professional community, he relies on a self-created interpretive framework derived just from his own law experience, which is not nothing, but it doesn't meet the threshold for expert testimony that's considered to be reliable or the product of reliable principles and methods.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another live edition of Dom Sicali Mafia Roundtable. Hope everybody's having a great day. I, myself, run ragged. You can see my collar's all over the place, but we'll fix it. We'll clean up well, that's all. So, today we are going to have another blockbuster event. another blockbuster event, and we are going to expose Joey Molino once and for all. Again, we are not picking on Joey. We're just keeping it real. He's the one that actually came out with the razor, started slicing, calling rats, and that's it, coming after us. And he's the biggest clown out there on social media, a mob boss who admitted on tape about the mafia. Slipped up. Yes, he did. So, for those of you who are new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We are hardwired in here, and it's raining cats and dogs that come out of the sky. So, hopefully, we won't affect our service. But for those of you who don't know, I was a captain in the Bonanno crime family in New York City. Ran the streets my whole life, always loyal to the life. And until one day I just had enough. I wasn't going to be a scapegoat once again. We have waiting to come in, Joe Barone. Joe Barone was actually an associate of mine on the streets while working with the government on the streets for the 5 years I knew Joe. Never once set me up. He could have had me set up anytime he wanted to, but he never did. So I have a lot of respect for the guy. When I found out, I wanted to choke him. He was cooperating, but, you know, as I assessed the situation, I thought about it. I said, you know what, he could have hurt me either. Without further ado, Joe Barone. What's up, Joe?
Hey, Dominic. Good to see you again.
Nap early today.
Absolutely. Hit the gym nice. I was ready to go. Got my workout in.
And folks, just so everybody knows, we are going to do a story on Joe's best buddy in town. Buddy himself. Buddy.
Yeah. Good old
We're going to do a story on you. You're the next one in our scope. We got you, buddy. So you can get